Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that quietly shapes our lives. Habits. These small, seemingly insignificant actions hold the potential to transform everything. Habits, when harnessed, have a remarkable way of pulling us toward our best selves, even when we aren't consciously trying. So let's talk about the power of habit, each a stepping stone toward understanding and embracing how habits can shape who we are and who we're becoming. The first step in creating meaningful habits isn't discipline, it's clarity. Too often, we rely on sheer willpower to force ourselves into doing things, thinking that if we just try hard enough, we'll get there. But here's the thing. Willpower is a finite resource. It wanes throughout the day as we make decisions, deal with challenges, and navigate life. Clarity, on the other hand, is a compass. When we know exactly what we want and why it matters to us, we're no longer fighting ourselves to make a habit stick. Think of clarity as the why behind the what. It's not enough to say, I want to exercise more, or I want to be more productive. Why do you want those things? Is it about having more energy to play with your kids, feeling confident in your own skin, or reaching a dream you've always had but kept putting off? When your habits are deeply tied to your values and goals, they start to feel less like obligations and more like opportunities. Clarity also makes it easier to measure progress. Without a clear picture of what success looks like, we're left floundering, unsure if we're even on the right path. For instance, if your goal is to get healthier, what does that mean to you? Does it mean cooking at home more often, getting 8 hours of sleep, or running a 5K? Being specific about your goals helps you know when you're succeeding and keeps you motivated to continue. But clarity isn't just about the outcome, it's also about the process. Ask yourself, what does this habit look like in my daily life? What's the simplest version of it that I can start with today? When you take the time to define these details, you remove the ambiguity that often becomes an excuse for procrastination. Clarity turns someday into today because you know exactly what you're working toward and how to begin. In the end, clarity gives habits their roots. It's a difference between drifting aimlessly and charting a course with purpose. When you're clear about why something matters and how it connects to your values, you don't need to rely on willpower to keep going. You're pulled forward by something deeper, something meaningful. Clarity is your foundation, your anchor, and your guide. When we think about change, it's easy to imagine sweeping transformations, a complete overhaul of our routines, our diets, or our lives. But the truth is, lasting change rarely happens in one grand gesture. It's the small, consistent actions we take every day that create the most profound impact over time. These tiny adjustments, almost invisible in the moment, have a way of building momentum that leads to remarkable results. So, think about it like this. A single drop of water doesn't seem significant, but over time, those drops can carve out a canyon. Similarly, small changes, like committing to reading for 10 minutes a day, or swapping one sugary drink for water, might seem trivial at first, but they accumulate into something much bigger. The beauty of small changes is that they're achievable. They don't require massive amounts of willpower or a dramatic upheaval of your life. Instead, they fit seamlessly into your existing routines, making them easier to sustain. Small changes are also less intimidating, which makes them easier to start. Imagine telling yourself, I need to exercise for an hour every day. That thought alone can feel overwhelming and make it hard to even begin. But what if you committed to just 5 minutes of movement? 5 minutes feels manageable even on the busiest days. And once you've started, you'll often find that you're motivated to keep going. This leads us to our next tip, which is that's the magic of small changes. They lower the barrier to entry, making it easier to create a habit. These incremental shifts are especially powerful because of the compounding effect. Over time, they don't just add up, they multiply. A small improvement each day, just 1% better. Might not feel like much, but over a year, that 1% compounds into something extraordinary. This is how small, seemingly insignificant actions can lead to exponential growth. Another benefit of starting small is that it builds confidence. Each time you follow through on a small commitment, you're proving to yourself that you can stick with something. That sense of accomplishment creates a positive feedback loop, encouraging you to take the next step. Success breeds success. And before you know it, those small wins are stacking up into something truly transformative. But perhaps the most compelling part of small changes is that they're sustainable. Big dramatic changes often rely on a surge of motivation or energy, which inevitably fades. Small changes, however, integrate into your life in a way that feels natural. They don't require extraordinary effort, so you're more likely to keep them going for the long haul. In the end, small changes are about focusing on progress, not perfection. It's not about doing everything all at once. It's about doing something, no matter how small, every day. These little steps forward create momentum, and that momentum carries you toward your goals in a way that feels achievable and empowering. The path to transformation isn't paved with grand lips. It's built on small, consistent steps that move you closer to the person you want to become. The way we see ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, shapes our habits in powerful ways. These narratives act like a lens coloring everything we do. They influence not only what we believe we're capable of, but also how we approach challenges, setbacks, and change. If we want to transform our habits, we first need to examine the stories we've been telling ourselves and decide whether they're helping us or holding us back. Think about the times you've said something like, I'm just not good at sticking to routines, or I've always been terrible with money. These statements may feel like facts, but they're not. They're stories, and like all stories, they can be rewritten. The problem with holding on to negative narratives is that they create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you're not disciplined, for example, you're less likely to try building habits that require discipline because you've already decided you'll fail. The story you tell becomes a barrier before you even begin. But here's the good news. Our stories are not set in stone. They're malleable, changeable, and entirely within our control. It starts with becoming aware of the narratives running through your mind. Pay attention to the labels you've given yourself. Are you telling yourself you're too busy, not creative, or bad at follow-through? These labels may feel harmless, but they can quietly shape your identity and in turn, your habits. To rewrite these stories, begin by challenging their validity. Ask yourself, is this story true? Is it based on evidence? Or is it just something I've believed for so long that it feels true? Often you'll find that these stories are based on isolated experiences, like one failed attempt at a habit or a critical comment someone made years ago. They're not reflective of your potential or who you can become. Once you've identified the stories you want to change, replace them with empowering ones. Instead of saying, I'm bad at saving money, try, I'm learning to be better with my finances. Instead of, I can't stick to a fitness routine, say, I'm someone who prioritizes my health. Notice the shift in energy. These new stories aren't just more positive, they're also more flexible and action-oriented. They create space for growth rather than shutting it down. The stories we tell ourselves also determine how we respond to setbacks. If you believe I'm not good enough, every mistake can feel like confirmation of that belief. But if your story is I'm resilient and learning, then setbacks become opportunities for growth rather than reasons to give up. The narrative you choose can either trap you in a cycle of self-doubt or propel you forward with hope and determination. What's even more fascinating is how these stories influence our identity. Habits are most sustainable when they align with how we see ourselves. If your story is, I'm someone who values health, then habits like exercising and eating well become natural extensions of that identity. On the other hand, if you see yourself as someone who never finishes anything, it's much harder to stick with habits because they clash with how you view yourself. Changing your habits starts with changing your story. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about recognizing who you truly are and who you're capable of becoming. Every time you challenge a limiting belief and take a small step toward a new habit, you're rewriting your story. And over time, those small edits add up to a narrative of strength, resilience, and growth. The stories we tell ourselves matter deeply because they don't just reflect who we are, they shape who we become. So take a moment to listen to the narrative playing in your mind. If it doesn't serve you, give yourself permission to rewrite it. You have the pen in your hand, and the story is yours to tell. Our environment plays a far greater role in shaping our habits than we often realize. While we like to believe that our actions are purely the result of willpower or conscious decisions, much of what we do is actually a response to the cues around us. Our surroundings, both physical and social, act like silent architects, nudging us towards certain behaviors while making others feel harder to achieve. If we want to build habits that last, we need to recognize the power of our environment and learn to shape it intentionally. Let's get honest. Consider how much easier it is to make healthy choices when fresh fruits and vegetables are visible and easily accessible in your kitchen. On the other hand, if your countertop is covered in snack foods, it becomes much harder to resist the temptation, no matter how strong your resolve. This is the subtle yet profound impact of environmental design. It's not about forcing yourself to have superhuman self-control. It's about setting yourself up for success by removing friction from the behaviors you want to encourage and adding it to the ones you want to avoid. Our environments also have a way of reinforcing existing habits. For example, if you always sit on the same spot on the couch with a bag of chips when watching TV, the sight of that couch might trigger the desire for snacks, even if you're not hungry. These connections are deeply ingrained because our brains are wired to associate places and objects with routines. By changing even small aspects of your environment, like rearranging furniture or keeping certain items out of sight, you can disrupt old patterns and make space for new ones. But it's not just the physical environment that matters. The people we surround ourselves with have an equally profound influence. Humans are inherently social creatures, and we tend to mimic the behaviors of those around us, often without realizing it. If your friends and family prioritize fitness, it's likely you'll feel motivated to join them for a workout. Conversely, if the people in your circle often choose sedentary or unhealthy habits, it can be harder to break free from those patterns. The key is to be intentional about the social environments you place yourself in. Seek out communities that align with the habits you want to build, whether that's a book club to encourage reading or a running group to stay active. Another important aspect of environment is how it affects our focus. In a cluttered or chaotic space, it's harder to concentrate and stay productive. On the other hand, a clean, organized workspace can make tasks feel more manageable and even enjoyable. The layout of your environment sends subtle signals to your brain about what's possible and what's not. For example, having your workout gear ready and visible makes it more likely you'll exercise, while leaving your phone out of reach can help you focus on work or study without distractions. Creating an environment that supports your habits doesn't have to involve dramatic changes. Small tweaks can make a big difference. Start by asking yourself what obstacles exist in your current environment and how you can remove them. If you want to drink more water, keep a water bottle on your desk. If you want to read more, place a book on your bedside table instead of your phone. The easier it is to engage in a desired habit, the more likely you are to stick with it. It's also worth considering how you can design your environment to celebrate your progress. Visual cues like a calendar where you mark off days you've completed a habit can serve as a powerful motivator. Seeing evidence of your consistency builds confidence and reinforces the belief that you are capable of change. Ultimately, shaping your environment is about taking control of the subtle forces that influence your behavior. It's not about perfection or trying to eliminate every possible temptation. It's about making the path to your goals as smooth and inviting as possible. When your surroundings align with your intentions, habits feel less like a struggle and more like a natural part of your day. Your environment can either work against you or work for you. The choice is yours, and the changes you make today can set the stage for the person you want to become tomorrow. And just because you know where you want to go doesn't mean that you all the way know how to get there. Failure has a way of making us feel like we're stuck, incapable, or even unworthy of success. But when we shift our perspective, we can see failure for what it truly is: feedback. It's not a stop sign or a judgment of our worth. It's a guidepost, a way of learning what doesn't work so we can recalibrate and move forward more wisely. Failure is an inevitable part of growth. And if we embrace it instead of fearing it, it becomes one of our most valuable teachers. When we're building new habits or working toward a goal, missteps are bound to happen. You skip a workout, give in to an old craving, or miss a deadline. It's easy in those moments to feel like you've undone all your progress, or to give in to a wave of self-criticism. But the reality is that a single failure, or even a string of them, doesn't define the outcome. What matters is how you respond. Not do you let the failure derail you completely, or do you take a step back, reflect on what happened, and adjust your approach. Failure gives us data. It helps us identify the gaps in our strategies, the weaknesses in our routines, and the triggers that lead us off course. For example, if you find that you consistently skip morning workouts, the failure isn't a sign that you're lazy or incapable, it's a clue. Maybe your current plan doesn't fit your schedule, or maybe you need to make it easier by laying out your workout clothes the night before. The key is to see failure not as a flaw in yourself, but as a mismatch between your strategy and your circumstances. One of the most important shifts we can make is to view failure as part of the process, not a deviation from it. No one builds habits or achieves goals without stumbling along the way. Think of failure as proof that you're trying, that you're stepping out of your comfort zone and working towards something meaningful. If everything always went smoothly, it would mean you weren't challenging yourself. Growth comes from the messy, imperfect moments where we have to learn, adapt, and try again. It's also crucial to separate the failure from your identity. Failing at something doesn't mean you're a failure. Too often we internalize our mistakes, allowing them to shape how we see ourselves. But failure is about actions, not worth. Missing a step in your journey doesn't erase the effort you've already put in or diminish your capacity to succeed. It's simply a signal that something needs to be adjusted. Another powerful way to reframe failure is to celebrate it as a sign of courage. Every failure represents a risk you took, a moment when you chose to try rather than stand still. There's bravery in that, and it's worth acknowledging. Without risk, there's no progress. Failure is a sign that you're in the arena, doing the work, and moving closer to your goals. Failure also teaches us resilience. When we learn to pick ourselves up after a setback, we build the mental and emotional strength to keep going, no matter how tough the road gets. Over time, this resilience becomes a habit in itself, a habit of perseverance that can carry us through future challenges. The more we practice bouncing back from failure, the less daunting it becomes. To truly embrace failure as feedback, it's helpful to create a system for reflecting on your missteps. Ask yourself questions like, what led to this outcome? What can I do differently next time? What did this experience teach me about my habits, triggers, or goals? By approaching failure with curiosity rather than judgment, you turn it into an opportunity for growth. Lastly, remember that failure is temporary, but the lessons it offers can be permanent. Each misstep is a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. It's part of the messy, non-linear path to success. When you accept failure as feedback, you free yourself from the fear of making mistakes and open the door to greater creativity, persistence, and self-compassion. The next time you stumble, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this is part of the process. Failure isn't the end of the journey. It's simply a moment along the way, guiding you toward a better, stronger, and wiser version of yourself. Our behaviors are deeply influenced by the people around us. Without even realizing it, we mirror the habits, attitudes, and routines of those we spend the most time with. This is because humans are inherently social creatures, wired to connect and adapt to the group. When it comes to habits, this interconnectedness is a powerful force. Habits aren't just personal, they're contagious. And this truth can work both for us and against us, depending on how we navigate it. Think about the last time you joined a group of people who shared a common behavior. Maybe you started working out because your friends invited you to their gym, or you found yourself trying a new hobby because someone in your circle was passionate about it. This isn't a coincidence. Being around others who model certain habits normalizes those behaviors, making them feel less intimidating and more achievable. When you see someone close to you commit to a routine, it sends a powerful message. If they can do it, so can I. The influence of those around us extends even further. Research shows that habits ripple through social networks in surprising ways. For example, if your friend starts exercising, it increases the likelihood that you will too. But the effect doesn't stop there. Your friend's friend, even someone you've never met, is also more likely to adopt healthier habits because of that initial change. Our habits spread like a chain reaction, impacting not only your immediate relationships, but also the broader network of connections around you. However, the contagious nature of habits can also have a downside. If the people in your life tend to engage in habits you're trying to avoid, like excessive screen time, unhealthy eating, or procrastination, it can be much harder to break free from those patterns. This doesn't mean you have to cut ties with people you care about, but it does mean you need to be mindful of how their behaviors influence you. It might involve setting boundaries, creating distance when necessary, or finding ways to gently steer conversations and activities toward more positive directions. One of the most powerful ways to harness the contagious nature of habits is by intentionally surrounding yourself with people who embody the behaviors you aspire to adopt. Want to get into a consistent exercise routine? Spend time with people who value fitness. Want to become more mindful? Join a meditation group. These environments provide not just inspiration, but also accountability. When you're part of a group, there's a shared expectation that everyone is working toward similar goals. And this collective momentum makes it easier to stay on track. But it's also important to recognize that the influence goes both ways. You're contagious too. Your habits, whether positive or negative, affect the people around you. This means that by committing to your own growth, you have the power to inspire others. When your loved ones see you showing up for yourself, whether it's by prioritizing your health, pursuing your passions, or staying consistent with your goals, they're more likely to reflect on their own habits and consider making changes too. You don't have to preach or push. Simply living as an example is often enough. One of the most beautiful aspects of contagious habits is how they create a sense of shared purpose. When you and the people in your life are working towards similar goals, it strengthens your connection. There's a feeling of camaraderie, of cheering each other on, and of celebrating successes together. This sense of community adds an emotional layer to the habit, making it more meaningful and enjoyable to maintain. Habits are also contagious in subtle ways. Even small, consistent actions, like smiling more, expressing gratitude, or keeping a positive outlook, can ripple out and influence the mood and behaviors of those around you. Over time, these small ripples create larger waves, shaping not just your life, but the culture of your relationships, workplaces, and communities. Ultimately, the contagious nature of habits is a reminder that we're never truly alone in our efforts to change. Our successes and struggles are part of a larger web of connections, and every step we take toward building better habits contributes to that collective growth. By surrounding ourselves with people who uplift and inspire us, and by striving to be that source of inspiration for others, we create a virtuous cycle of positive change. So as you think about the habits you want to build, ask yourself, who is in my circle and how are they influencing me? And just as importantly, how am I influencing them? When you harness the power of connection, habits become not just a personal pursuit, but a shared journey, one that has the potential to transform lives far beyond your own. When we think about building habits, the conversation often revolves around discipline, grit, and perseverance. While these qualities are important, they're not always enough to sustain us in the long run. The truth is, the habits that stick are often the ones that bring us joy. Joy is the fuel that keeps us going when motivation fades and challenges arise. It's what transforms a task from something we have to do into something we want to do. When joy is part of the equation, habits no longer feel like a chore. Think about a time when you were genuinely excited about an activity. Whether it was dancing, cooking, playing a sport, or diving into a creative project. You probably didn't have to force yourself to show up. The act itself was rewarding enough to keep you coming back. This is the power of joy. It makes effort feel effortless. Unfortunately, many of us approach habits from a place of obligation or punishment. We set goals like, I need to lose weight, I have to save money, or I must get better at time management. These goals, while well-intentioned, are often rooted in guilt or shame. They're driven by a sense of lack, which makes the process feel heavy and unsustainable. But when we reframe our habits around joy, when we focus on what makes us feel good rather than what we think we should be doing, everything changes. For example, instead of forcing yourself to run because you believe it's the right way to exercise, explore activities that genuinely bring you joy. Maybe it's dancing, hiking, swimming, or yoga. The key is to find something that aligns with your natural interests and makes you feel alive. When you enjoy the process, the habit becomes a source of fulfillment rather than a drain on your energy. Joy also makes habits more sustainable because it taps into intrinsic motivation. When you enjoy something, you don't need external rewards or constant reminders to keep doing it. The act itself becomes its own reward. This doesn't mean that every moment of a habit will be easy or fun. There will still be days when you feel tired or uninspired. But when joy is at the heart of what you're doing, it creates a well of energy you can draw from, even in difficult times. Another way to infuse joy into your habits is by celebrating small wins. Progress, no matter how small, feels good. It reinforces the belief that you're capable of change and creates a positive feedback loop. Take a moment to acknowledge your efforts, whether it's completing a workout, cooking a healthy meal, or sticking to a new routine for a week. These celebrations don't have to be elaborate. They can be as simple as giving yourself a high five or sharing your success with a friend. The act of celebrating creates a sense of joy and accomplishment that makes you want to keep going. Joy can also be found in the meaning and purpose behind your habits. When you connect a habit to something that matters deeply to you, it becomes more than just an action. It becomes a reflection of your values. For example, cooking healthy meals might bring you joy, not just because it tastes good, but because it aligns with your desire to take care of your body and show love to your family. Finding this deeper connection adds an emotional dimension to your habits, making them feel more rewarding. It's important to note that joy doesn't always mean instant gratification. Sometimes the joy comes from the sense of pride and fulfillment you feel after completing a task, even if it was challenging in the moment. This is what psychologists call eudaimonic happiness, the satisfaction that comes from doing something meaningful or aligned with your long-term goals. Balancing this deeper joy with moments of lighthearted fun creates a well-rounded approach to habits that is both enriching and enjoyable. Finally, joy is contagious. When you approach your habits with a sense of enthusiasm and positivity, it inspires those around you. Your energy can uplift others, creating a ripple effect that spreads joy and motivation. Whether it's a family member joining you for a morning walk or a friend picking up a book because they see how much you enjoy reading, your joyful habits have the power to create a supportive and uplifting environment. At its core, joy is what transforms habits from something you endure to something you embrace. It's what keeps you coming back, not because you have to, but because you want to. By seeking out the joy in every step of the process, whether it's the act itself, the progress you're making, or the meaning behind it, you create habits that nourish your spirit and enhance your life. When joy is the fuel, the journey becomes just as rewarding as the destination. In the end, habits aren't just about what we do, they're about who we're becoming. They're a declaration of our identity and a reflection of what we hold dear. So my challenge to you is this: choose one habit, just one, that aligns with your values and start today. Because the power of habit is not just in the doing, it's in the becoming. Now, thank you.